Welcome to another edition of Community Cop Hotep. My name is Michael Graves, co-founding member of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. And today we are honored. It's an honor to really have one of the most sincere, hardworking brothers that I know. That bad brother from the Southeast, commonly known as the Irritated Genie, your brother Ayo Kamanzi. How you doing today, brother?
Fantastic.
Good to see you. Certainly, we have a lot to talk about. In the tradition of Community Cop, what we always do is we start with a piece in history, and that is because our history is so replete. We don't have to make up things. We don't have to get creative. We could just look at something that happened this week in our history, and we'll keep it short to one incident. In 1967, this week, we had a situation which we will commonly refer to as the Detroit Rebellion. And this started when two brothers, it just came back from several tours in Vietnam. They were veterans fighting for this country. They came back and family and friends welcomed them back, a club right up on the second floor over a business establishment. They were having a little, weekend get together and bringing everybody out. Ergo, the police started harassing people and got physical and started beating a few people up and affecting some arrests of the parking that was in that downtown area, which was not usual, but this was a coming of sorts of veterans coming back from a life and death situation. So it was an overflow crowd, but in any event, the police, as usual, the case is they got excessive, and it sparked what later became a rebellion. Your thoughts, brother?
We have so many incidents like this across the history of this country, and as difficult as they are to recall sometimes with all of the harm that is done. The beautiful thing to know is sometimes we don't recognize it being from the United States of America. But one thing about Black people in this country, we're not going to continue to take abuse. This is Black people around the world and the history of the world. This is our character. But one thing, being outgunned and outnumbered for 400 years, toe to toe, every day of our lives in this Western Hemisphere, we have consistently gotten to a point where we say we won't take it no more, and we stand up for ourselves. So that Detroit rebellion was one of those instances. And if you know anything about brothers and sisters from Detroit, you can imagine that was quite a fight because they some fighters.
Oh, no doubt about it. That's indicative of what a real spirit in America is. That's when our spirits are uninfected by maybe aspects of the civil rights movement, gatekeepers who tell us to turn the other cheek, to accept this, they know not what they do. That thinking will set us back and get more of us hurt or killed. Certainly, hands up, don't shoot, that sort of thing that, aired itself several years ago. So I believe, and I agree with you so much, that our spirit, we have a martial spirit naturally in us. So left to our own devices, a Black man is going to defend the Black woman and the Black child. Consequently, we're not going to allow just anybody just put their hands on us, and there's not going to be an adequate response. And that's our God-given right.
That's right. That's our spirit. That's our personality. That's our ancestral story. That's who we are. That's why we're doing the Return of the Black Man, because like you said, we've had too many of those soft, scared, compromised voices that our children have been hearing. Too many of our sons don't have strong men. Every time they look up, it's an effeminized male or something he can't even identify with real, true Black manhood. And we're going to change the tone of that. August 21st down here in DC, and we're so glad you're gonna be able to be there to do that. We need that Detroit rebellion type of spirit back in
Ferguson. What about Ferguson?
Oh yeah, Ferg, we need that Darren Seal spirit. That's right. That's what we need. That's my good brother.
Right.
Peace be upon him. Yes, we need that spirit.
Oh, that was a strong brother. And perhaps during this discourse, we'll get back to Darren Seals, because you can't mention him too much, because he typified that spirit in Ferguson. I've never seen that spirit anywhere else in a collective environment like what I saw in Ferguson. I saw men, women, and children. I saw women with baby carriages, not afraid of uniformed police officers that were wearing fatigues. They weren't running, and tear gas was being spread, explosives and shooting over one's head, and the women were not afraid. And I was taken back by it when I saw it, and I saw women were not afraid and weren't running. Young people, very young people, and they claim young people don't care about what's going on in Black America. They're more into themselves. Well, Ferguson said, no, we're all together. And Ferguson proved that there's a spirit among us of collective consciousness, a spirit that says that if you touch one of us, you're gonna get that plus back at you. So I respect the people of Ferguson so much, and certainly Darren Seals, because he was pulled over by police officers and told by police officers, you better choose your friends wisely, because look how easy this is. They pulled him over in an isolated area and let him know this could be your last breath. But that brother continued to fight to the end. And so when he was found in a car, on fire, dead in a car, rounds in his head, it shows you that that wasn't what you would consider a robbery. That had the modus operandi of somebody that was sending a message to the Black community.
Well, you know, I know that young brother, and what I can say I really appreciate it is that he didn't do a lot of talking. One thing about, I mean, he would speak, but he was an action guy. And he went through so much and he wasn't afraid. And we would talk sometime when I get a chance to talk to him, and I was trying to get him to do things a certain way, but he did them the way he knew how as a young person. He was running out there, direct confrontation with injustice. And that's the kind of spirit we need in our young people. We're gonna talk about something today where we gotta turn the corner, because our children are the younger the people are, they're most affected by the discussion we're gonna have, some of what we're gonna talk about today. And we need that spirit back for the young people to start believing in something, a future for themselves, and taking that Darren Seal spirit.
Yes, sir. Now, from the outset, Brother Io, we want to talk about COVID, but there's some COVID-19. However, there's some other things that we want to touch, and we want to do a backdrop and build a foundation first, because I don't want your salient words to go over anybody's head. I want you to make it plain for a layperson, for our brothers and sisters, the science and certain things that are going on that we might not be aware of, and that those of us who are aware, they can just say amen. But those who are not aware, you need to open up and listen and do some research after that. Now, from the outset, is this the first time in history that chemical warfare has been used on our people? Or has the white man used chemical warfare in the past?
If you read a book by our sister Harriet A. Washington, who did a phenomenal job called Medical Apartheid, that book, we think about Tuskegee and the horror that they did to our people in the Tuskegee experiment. But that book shows us that that was one of many atrocities, and maybe not even the worst one. But if we go even beyond that, most people don't know that and thank you for the question, the foundational incident that occurred in the history of this country, most relevant to allow the white settlers to decide that they could then separate themselves and have their revolution and become a republic, the United States of America, was based in chemical and biological warfare. To make it plain, in 1766, they were in a war, and there was a Native American by the name of Pontiac who had organized different groups of Native Americans, traditionally who some of them used to fight against each other. And to put it simply, he organized them, and they were 2 forts away. They had knocked down 9 forts, and they were 2 forts. I think it was Fort Eustis and maybe Fort Detroit left. And then they were going to expel all the Europeans out from this continent, from North America. I mean, they had that plan. And the Europeans, literally, the English at that time said, we see here that there's no way for her to win this war physically. And at that time is when they got a Jewish guy by the name of Levi Andrew Levy. He supplied blankets with smallpox as a gift to them during warfare. And the Native Americans said, well, we'll accept a gift even from our enemy as we're fighting them because it's cold and it's wintertime. So they gave him
you're saying a person named Levy had that prior to General Amherst?
Well, I don't know if he had it before or what the case was, but when
was it General Amherst that distributed the blankets that you're referring to Native Americans?
It was General Amherst who gave it to the Native Americans, and he got the blankets from Levi Andrew Levy. He procured them.
Now, did he also poison any of the water that Native Americans used to drink?
Yes, there were any number of tactics, from killing the buffalo en masse. There were any number of tactics, like you said, poisoning the water, even food stocks. But I would dare say the single most relevant in my historical analysis incident that occurred was the smallpox, because he wiped out, the whites wiped out an army that had defeated them. Literally, they were expelled from the continent.
Now, are you willing to say this was done with malicious intent, or was this accidental?
No, in the documents that you read in history, General Amherst said, this is what we're going to do. Since we can't defeat them physically, then what we need to do, maybe we should give blankets with smallpox. They wouldn't be expecting that, and maybe we can wipe them out that way. And they were effective and successful in doing it.
Now, how did Native Americans' bodies react to this new introduced disease that their bodies were not geared towards?
It destroyed an army that had defeated the English in battle, and the English had all but put up the white flag of surrender. So that's how much of an effect it had. In a couple of months, the war was over. The army of the Native Americans was depleted, and they were dying at a rate that would be difficult for us to imagine at this time, because they were winning the war, so they could not possibly see anything happening and ending their capacity to fight that fast.
Were there any governmental charges? Was there any prosecution later of General Amherst?
No, after that incident, it was looked at as a heroic effort, and that was 1766. 10 years later, 1776, the English had grown and gotten into a position where they become so bold that they said, we're no longer English, we're American now, and we're no longer going to adhere to English law. So it was looked at as a heroic thing that was really a launching pad for the development of the Republic.
I guess that's why upstate New York, they have a town named after General Amherst, as well as a university.
I mean, that kind of tells us, what that tells us, in my estimation, is that the tactic of germ warfare, chemical and biological warfare, is a precedent that Europeans have been using for generations. And if we go back even to the Roman Empire, when they defeated Carthage, one of the things they did was Dr. John Henry Clark teaches us that they plowed salt into the earth so that we couldn't grow anything in that region, because they never wanted to see another Hannibal or Carthage. So again, that's chemical and biological warfare on food supply. So this is a tactic that Europeans have used for quite some time.
Okay, well, there was a black man, and it's odd that, you would have American generals to do something like that. It was actually a black man in the early 1700s, and that brought over techniques of inoculation. His name is Onesimus, and in 1721, he actually saved the city of Boston that had a smallpox outbreak, and he was from Africa, an enslaved African from Africa by way of the Caribbean that immunized the entire boat that he was on by able to take cuts, small little cuts into each person that had it, and put those cuts on everybody, immunizing their bodies, consequently saved over 250 Africans who were being brought here. And then later on, he used that same technique in a serious outbreak in Boston in 1721. And this is when some European doctors, the one who's given credit for it, he learned that from that enslaved African, that Boston doctor later on, who got all the credit for it, got that from an enslaved African. So given that you've established that there's a history of chemical warfare, just speak basically, is this current vaccine, is it a vaccine? And if not, what are we talking about here?
It's not a vaccine. These are not vaccines. Vaccines, and these are not medicine. And there are a lot of people in medicine who are saying this now. And for people who are hearing this for the first time, it is not that you do not have experts in science and in medicine who are saying this. I'm not an expert in either of them. The reason you haven't heard this, if you haven't, is because mainstream media is part of the process of what is actually an active chemical, biological war against the people of America and the world. This is actually a mass genocide. And I would actually classify it, if I were to classify it, I call it eco-biological terrorism warfare. This is eco-biological terrorism, meaning, and there are many facets to it, but they created something that is a bioweapon to commit significant harm and death to massive numbers of people. And the eco part is, and they're using the threat of terrorizing people with taking your jobs and your livelihood if you don't take it.
Now, when you say they created this, are you saying that this is man-made, or was it made in a laboratory, or was this just the natural course of nature exposing itself?
Okay, and for the purpose, and then hopefully we get a chance to show some of it, because some of the things I'm going to say would be controversial if you weren't able to see for yourself that this information is available out here. I don't even use the term anymore unless, very frequently, COVID-19. I don't use that anymore.
Right.
Because it has much less meaning. What I call it now is the Fauci. Because we're not actually talking about a virus, meaning the definition of a virus is a natural occurring pathogen that can affect the body and have an effect on the body. It is not that type. It's not natural. It's man-made. It's a bioweapon. So that's why some people say, well, it's not even a real virus. Some of the scientists, they're not saying that there's not something that is harming people. They're not saying that. They're saying it's not a virus by the definition of a natural occurring phenomenon. It is a bioweapon that was engineered and created for the purpose of population tailoring, which is just genocide, and some other things that are very disturbing in terms of the science that is being studied and experimented on with people out here in the world today.
Okay, well, let's establish one thing first.
Mm-hmm.
Is the disease real? Is the disease real, effective? Is it deadly? Is it something that is actually killing people?
Okay.
let's go with that part first. Is it something that's actually killing people?
Yes. So for an average layman like myself, who is not a scientist or in the medical field, look at it as a man-made virus that was intentionally made that targets people that have pre-existing health conditions, things like high blood pressure, diabetes, if you have asthma, things like that, if you have pre-existing conditions, and if you're of a certain age. So basically, the less healthy you are with pre-existing conditions, this man-made, if you would want to call it a virus, we call the Fauci, that many people call COVID-19, this thing comes in and it can be very dangerous, and it has killed many people. Now, that's the yes, it's a virus, and it is killing people. The no is that it's really not what we would classify as a virus. It didn't just spurn out of nature, and then this is something that's killing people. No, it is a man-made, concocted bioweapon that operates so similar to a virus, we would call it a virus. But it's not actually a virus. It's technology that has been made to, it uses viral particles, but it's actually technology used to create the scenario that we see now.
So it is not a natural occurrence. You're saying that this was created in a laboratory.
It's created in a laboratory for the purpose. This one was not created to kill everybody or to even do the major population tailoring. This one was created to create a condition that they could then come in and tell people, hey, you need to take these shots, which is the real experimentation on people and the major population tailoring, which is why they're trying to get everybody on the planet inoculated with these, we call them vaccinations, because there's any number of people who are dying from it or having tremendously harmful impacts after taking these, again, we call them vaccinations, these shots, these experimental injections. We call them genetic experimental injections. They're not the traditional vaccinations that we are used to getting. So even if you're pro or anti-vaccination, it doesn't matter. We're not talking about whether or not you're pro or anti-vaccinations. These aren't vaccinations. These are genetic experimental injections that have the potential to do incredible damage and actually are killing numbers of people now that they're not properly reporting to the American public.
Now, where was this created at? Where was it created at? And give me an approximate time frame that I know this wasn't created last year during the pandemic or plandemic. How long ago was this created, and why was there just some dialogue around people were able to predict this? When was this created? Where and when?
Well, I'll say it like this because that gets very technical. I'll give a simplistic answer.
Sure.
I'll say, when we can look easily for the layman without going all the way back to AIDS, because Anthony Fauci was involved in that process as well. We're not going to go back that far, but he was involved back that far. If we just go back to 2014, that's a good time slot for us to start with. In 2014, the United States government was confronted by the scientists in America. And the scientists in America said, there is a science that exists that we are funding that you must stop. It is called gain of function research. I'm gonna say it again, gain of function. Look that up, and once you research that, it'll take you down a rabbit hole, and you'll see that this is all documentation. This is not conspiracy. The scientists said, listen, this is what gain of function is. Gain of function is when you take a pathogen that could not infect a person. So in this case, it would be coronavirus that's in a bat. The bat can't infect a person with this coronavirus, but it's very contagious. But among bats, gain of function says, let me take the bat, take this coronavirus, make it more dangerous, and make it jump from a bat into a person and affect the person and have a negative impact on them. But
Was this done in Wuhan or somewhere?
this was done in the United States of America. This was done in Chapel Hill. This was done, maybe some of it was tested in Fort Detrick, but it was tested in America. And Anthony Fauci, the head of the NIAID, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, which is part of NIH, he was in charge of this when this was occurring.
But
So-
he's the guy that's still around now.
He is the guy that's still around now. And again, the objective was create a bioweapon that mimics a virus that's so dangerous or dangerous enough that it can kill a certain population. Once it threatens that population, we can use that to fabricate it being more dangerous and scare people. Then we can scare them and we can start mandating that everybody take the real experimental bioweapon that we're going to give them in mass. So this was done in order to create the real thing that they could control, because you can imagine a bioweapon that can jump person to person, that could get to anybody, even the people that are creating it. So you have to create something that's not so dangerous that it'll kill you and your family. You would know what to do to treat this kind of thing. It's not as dangerous as they're making it, but they can use the media, who's part of the process. Once we understand who's driving all of this, we can use people in government. We can use the guy who's in charge of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's in charge of the health of the American citizenship. We have these things in place. We can scare people. We have Bill Gates, who has the money and the plan waiting to inject people. That is the real major threat, which is what we're facing now, the assassinations.
Okay, now, this is the work normally done by scientists and people who I guess we would easily classify as eugenicists, but you just mentioned Bill Gates, who's not a scientist. And I've seen him hugging Black babies. Now, is he a eugenicist, and is his parents eugenicists?
He's a eugenicist and his parents are eugenicists, but in telling this narrative, I really do want to, because I don't want it to break up and become confusing to people.
Okay.
So I do want to hit this part, because we talked about the scientists in America. Again, these are the scientists. This is before a person like myself in 2014, I never heard the words gain of function used together. The scientists in America went to the United States government where Barack Obama was president and said, this science of gain of function must be stopped and ended, because the only results that it can produce, it cannot help anyone. The only potential is that it could create a worldwide pandemic that could kill untold millions of people and become the biggest catastrophe in the history of the known world. So they said this research has to stop. They put so much pressure on Barack Obama that the Obama administration said, okay, we'll put a temporary stay on it, moratorium. This research has to stop. This is where it gets extremely insidious. It's already insidious. But when that was done in 2014, in 2015, we now have the documented proof and evidence that, according to the information that's available, Dr. Fauci took millions of dollars through another company. That company, I want to give the correct name. That company is called, I think it's Echo Health. Echo Health Alliance. And through them, and the Pentagon had funded up to $39 million to this Echo Health Alliance company anyway. But Dr. Anthony Fauci took upwards of $3.7 million of US taxpayer funds, meaning your funds and my funds that we pay our taxes for, took that money and got it to the Wuhan lab, specifically, I want to be very clear, to study gain of function research for coronavirus in bats in the Wuhan lab, meaning you're in Wuhan, you're a scientist. Can you study the coronavirus that is in bats, soup it up, make it more dangerous, and figure out how it can affect people so that we can then study it? This was paid for by this government under the direction of Anthony Fauci based on the information that we have today. They've even, the scientists, the Chinese scientists who did the research, when she gave the credits for who funded her research, she listed Dr. Anthony Fauci, and I believe it was NIH or NIAID. So she listed them by name.
Now that doctor's name is Dr. Shi?
Yes, Dr. Shi. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Now, what is the intent? Are they trying to depopulate certain parts of the world, whether it's Africa, or is the goal depopulation, or is this just a dry run of for something else?
Okay. There are multiple things that are going on. The first answer I would give is that because I'm not in the rooms with them when they're devising these plans, I can't tell you which so-called vaccinations that we call assassinations, which ones are designed to do exactly what, until we study it once it's done. I'm not there while they're doing it. What I can tell you is the things that they have discussed that they want to do that appear to be what they are now implementing. So one of the things is the global depopulation of the planet. There's like you were talking about eugenics. Bill Gates is a eugenicist. His father was a eugenicist. Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist. His father worked with Margaret Sanger's organization that grew into what we call Planned Parenthood. So we're talking about people who have publicly stated, including Bill Gates, our objective is to depopulate the planet. It has too many people. Now, I'm going to give people the number through my research that I've come up, and I've heard a number of people who come up with the same number that we estimate their target goal is for percentages of how many people they want to kill on this planet. They want to remove 80% of the people on this planet. That's the number that we've come up with. And it's a number of people who use that number, credible people. In order to do something like that, you have to have something of a major mass proportion, because even nuclear bombs wouldn't get that accomplished. We're confident that the way they're trying to do that is through these. But it's not just, in this case, it gets more insidious because it's not only that these are not vaccinations, but some of them are what we call mRNA, messenger RNA. They're not vaccinations at all. Again, they're genetic experimental injections that, in layman's terms, they go in, open up your DNA code. And once your DNA code is open, it attaches to your DNA code and then tells your body to create these spike proteins, which again, many of the scientists are saying the spike protein is the very dangerous thing to create in the body. Nevertheless, once they do that, your entire genetic code now has been changed and altered. That's a permanent change. There's no way to go back and reverse back into your normal genetic code.
Now, when you say genetic code, can you explain to a lay person what exactly that is?
Yes. When you go out and they're trying to determine if a crime has been committed, they get something called DNA. What it is, each person, unless they're twins, everybody has their own DNA. And it's separate from every other person on the planet, and it's identical. I mean, it's independent, except in identical twins. So the DNA code is your specific code, and science has figured out how to tell the DNA code. So once they get DNA, they can match it to you. If they can touch you and get your DNA, they can see who was there, who was in a particular place, because you only are the only person with your DNA code. This is the, if you will, software of life. This is what the creator, whoever you believe in, if it's God, if it's nature, has created to identify each individual as an individual. And it's not just people. Animals have it, plants, everything has DNA. That's what creates it and how you can identify the thing. This is science. What they are doing now is they are now tampering with that DNA. They're injecting nanobots, which are super microscopic, like small, tiny metal particles that can receive information, almost like what you put in a computer, but very, very, very small. So you can't see them with the naked eye. You know, you wouldn't be able to visibly see them. But they're injecting these things into people. Some of the injections, I can't tell you exactly which ones, but we know some of the mRNA ones are. Well, we know that this is what they were talking about they want to do. These are things that Bill Gates, among many others, have. This is not speculation. They're saying, we want to give people a tag to identify them that goes injected into their body with these injections, that we can identify them, that we can scan them and determine if they've gotten these things or not. This is why this is important. I just want to say this one point. It's very important. I want people to understand this. We look at genocide through the lens of maybe the Geneva Convention or our experience of slavery or the Native Americans genocide. What we don't understand, many of us at this time, when you take people who are either, again, by nature or by God, this is who we are. It's how we're born out of our mom's womb through our father's seed. That's who we are. When you take those people and you inject them with something that invades their DNA code and changes them permanently and passes on to their children and grandchildren, if they can have them, if they're not sterilized with this process, you've committed genocide, because they're no longer people in the way they were before.
Now, then I would say, because I know you have a more extensive lecture on this in your COVID-19 lecture. And I think that people should investigate and get that where you do a more thorough analysis. But explain to me as a layperson what this genetic code has to do with your immune system.
Okay, I'll explain it like this. I think it's probably, it'll be easier. As a layperson, you have a natural genetic code. That's just who you are. Then you have something called an immune system. We all have it. And it works like this. It's a powerful thing. It's brilliant. It operates with these things called antibodies. And essentially it works like this. Anything that's not supposed to be in your body, if it gets in your body, the protector of your life is your immune system. And it creates a defense so this thing that gets inside of you doesn't hurt you. So a good example is a lot of times we get a fever and we're like, man, I'm sick. Well, we are, but actually it's a good thing. What it means is the body has, something's gotten into the body that you can't see. Whatever it is that's in there, the body says, you know what? We did this, it didn't work. We did this, it didn't work. This thing doesn't like heat. So it turns your body up and turns up the temperature in your body so they can kill that thing that's not supposed to be in there. So your immune system is a brilliant thing, again, created by nature, created by God, created whatever you believe in, passed down to you generation to generation. How does this impact the immune system? How do these injections impact it? They're injecting things into your DNA code in every cell of your body that produce what they call spike proteins. These synthetic antibodies that they're creating compete with your natural antibodies. They're stronger because they're synthetic. So the problem is, under natural circumstances, if you have a healthy immune system, no matter what gets into your body, your immune system says, okay, let's make an adjustment, let's switch and alter to it and fight it. It doesn't have anything to fight with. Now they've created, once you take these mRNA and they put in this messenger RNA, they attach it to the DNA code and start creating spike protein, these synthetic proteins and antibodies that they're creating now compete with your body's natural ability to fight off and ward off disease. So that things that would never have hurt you in the past will be more effective in fighting you, because your antibodies have to fight through these synthetic proteins that are not designed but to fight one thing. They don't change up. They're not smart and fight everything that could come in your body, which your natural immune system can. So with vitamin D and vitamin C and with zinc and with natural things that were put here for us by the Creator, if you eat healthy, exercise, these type of things, positive thinking, these type of things can help build up your immune system to fight anything that comes in. Now we have to have a whole process once we get in these injections your natural immune system now has an internal infrastructure that become part of who you are that it has to fight with in order to protect you. This is very dangerous. We have no idea what level this could lead to death and harm on the planet. And what's scary is that there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are dying. Many of them are listing that they're dying in a system called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's a CDC reporting system for deaths and for harm that's being done due to these assassinations. And there are countless thousands of people who are reporting that their family members have died 3 days, 1 day, 2 days. You can read the reports. It's startling, and the mainstream media is not sharing this information with the people.
Now, is it accurate or safe to say that some people are more susceptible than others
To
the actual injections, to the actual so-called vaccine?
okay,
Well, that does, just can you tell me, is there a connection in whether it's with race, or is it certain genes that we or others might carry that make some more susceptible than others?
the only thing I've heard on that, there's a BCM, I think it's the BCM Journal, or BCM Journal. It's a medical journal. This was very interesting. Of course, they stated that who is most susceptible to death or transition from it are older people who already have comorbidities and different illnesses. But in terms of ethnic groups, they said that the most susceptible to the strand that they studied was actually white Anglo-Saxons that weren't from Finland. It wasn't the same for Finland, but from everywhere else, the white Anglo-Saxons. And secondly, it was Black people to catch it. But what they said then, and then Hispanics and Asians for that strand, they said were very unlikely to catch it, very low percentage to catch it. But what was interesting was that they said there were two groups who did not have the ACE2 variant, which is something that your body carries that will allow to attach onto this thing to make it very dangerous and harmful. And that was the Amish and the Ashkenazi Jew. In other words, they're saying that the Ashkenazi Jews are very unlikely to catch it, and even if they do, it won't be harmful to them. And the way they described it in this journal, medical journal, was that it's strangely and tragically selective.
Now, you mentioned there was an area in which to report strange deaths as a result of that, and most people don't know about that. So I hopefully you repeat that. You repeat it again, whether it's an email address or whatever it might be, or whether it's someplace, a physical structure where all these complaints go to, or the information goes to. Because can you name some Blacks? Because from what I've heard, that there are certain famous Blacks who is very questionable that they took the vaccine and shortly thereafter made their transition.
You have Hank Aaron. You have
Hank Aaron.
The Hank Aaron, the baseball player of all time in Major League Baseball, the Hank Aaron. He took it at Morehouse, was very proud, put it out there to show everybody, come get your vaccine. I'm taking mine. A couple weeks later, he was gone. Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
The boxer.
The boxer. Some people would argue the greatest middleweight of all time, if not the greatest.
No doubt.
Second or third.
With the exception of Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray Robinson, right. I mean, he was one of the greats, and he was still healthy. And they did not have any health issues that they reported. And his good friend, that he had one of the greatest 3 rounds of boxing any of us have ever witnessed, I think we'd agree on that, was with Brother Hearns. Hearns found out that Marvin
Thomas
Hagler,
Hitman Hearns.
the hitman, that's right. The hitman found out that his brother, Brother Hagler, was in ICU unit after taking the vaccine. And so he put that on Instagram. But he was still alive when he did that. So he thought he was going to make it. He said, let's pray for him. He didn't make it. And if you notice, the news has not put that out there, even though they had access to that information. We would not even realize that it was due to him being given that assassination if it wasn't for the fact that Brother Hearn shared that information before he transitioned. So there are lots of people. I mean, there was a sister who, I forget her name right now, I'm drawing a blank, but she was a legal analyst on television, beautiful sister.
Oh, you talking about Midwin Charles. She's from Brooklyn, a
Yes,
lawyer.
Brooklyn sister. Come on.
Midwin Charles, a lawyer from Brooklyn.
And again, she was another one saying, hey, I got mine today. I'm so happy. So many beautiful people out here from, you know, the military out here administering these. A couple weeks later, she gone.
And she was part of those sisters that are on MSNBC and CNN. Why hasn't her colleagues, why haven't they said anything? Because it's a group of journalists and lawyers like herself, Laura Coates, and so many others that do CNN and MSNBC, and read out, you know, and all of them. They all know each other. They all are friends, but they have been strangely silent.
I'm going to say something that may disturb people, but matter of fact, I can speak more. Man, I really would like to. This is when people get. Well, I'll just tell you. There's something called Event 201. I want everybody to look up Event 201. What it was that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with the John Hopkins Center for Health Security and the World Economic Forum, in October 2019, 10 weeks before the Fauci was unleashed and we started seeing the panic happen, they announced that this thing had gotten released. They had a meeting in New York City. Well, I know it was in New York. And they planned about what are we going to do in the event of a coronavirus outbreak. And so they talked about, one of the things they talked about is right what you're talking about now. If it happens, then people are going to start sharing information that we don't want them to share because it'll be quote unquote misinformation. And when that happens, we're going to have to clamp down and make it difficult. We're going to have to force and mandate vaccinations. We're going to have to bring out celebrities representing different communities and put them out front and tell everybody that these things are safe and you got to go get a vaccination. And we're going to have to start policing the sharing of information, which is commonly referred to as censorship in this country, which goes directly against the First Amendment, which is essentially we have to overthrow the Constitution and prevent people from having the constitutional right to speak what they believe. And that's what goes back to when I talked before, eco-biological terrorism, meaning your friend passed from getting this assassination. You want to say that, but if you tell people that, you're going to lose your job, which is the way you make a living and won't be able to get employed again. If you're the type of person that makes a living in media, then you can't say anything. And because so many people in media are not being shared this information and the information is not freely flowing, many of the people in media don't even know.
Okay. And, you know, don't want to shock all the people that are watching right now. We have a live audience right now. However, I have to ask you, are there some Black Trojan horses involved in this, whether consciously or unconsciously? Because you mentioned that there are people that are pushing people to get vaccinated. Now, whether they're store-bought Negroes or whether they're people that just don't know any better, who might some of these individuals be? And if you want to call names or organizations, or is it just the usual crowd of people that they use to keep us in check?
It's a combination. Many people are literally convinced that it's a good thing.
Right.
And so they're doing it because they don't have the information that we're sharing here tonight. But then you have paid hired agents who, like, let me give you the most relevant person. This is going to hurt people's feelings, but I ain't never not hurt your feelings before. I'm not going to start doing something new tonight, you know. Barack Hussein Obama,
Former president.
former president of the United States of America. I mean, it gets even deeper, really. I mean, I'm not going to get deeper into it, but December 2nd, 2014, he gave a speech. It would be worthy for you to watch that speech. You can go find it on YouTube. Again, December 2nd, 2014, he gave a speech. And essentially he was saying, look, and remember, this is 2014. This is not recent. He was the president. He said, Democrats and Republicans alike should be prepared for a major biological pandemic, a disease pandemic to spread. And we should now prepare to have every country around the world have places that are ready. And in so many words, to give them vaccinations. He didn't specifically say vaccinations, but to be treated with medical care in the event that this thing that we expect is coming will get here. In other words, he's part of the whole programming process. This thing was planned. That was in the same, he's saying that in December, when just in October, they had created a moratorium saying no more gain of function research because the scientists of America said this is going to create a major pandemic. So he's one of the ones that's part of the program. He knows exactly what he's doing. When you get a lot of the entertainers, because I don't know them and I'm not there with them, I can't tell you, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, the guy that does movies in New York, Spike Lee. They're telling our people to do this. Many of the sisters, I'll give one sister good credit. I've never been a fan of hers, but Wendy Williams, I was really proud of her when she was talking to Dr. Oz, and she said, I don't believe in it. I don't trust it. I'm not getting it. And you're not going to get me to tell people to get it. I was really proud of sister for standing her ground in that situation. But most of our entertainers are going along with it. I tell you also, I was very, very proud of. And he's not getting enough credit for this. And I think we should really credit the brother on this one. Brother LeBron James. Because they
Yes, sir.
They used all kind of tactics to get him to encourage people to take it. He refused. And then they even got Stephen A. Smith, like a little crawling dog.
Yeah, store-bought Negro.
Yes, to say that LeBron was pretty much being irresponsible for not telling people to go get it. And brother LeBron still held his composure and has refused to do it. And I don't believe that he's taken it, but he certainly has not gone out and encouraged our people to do so. So we have a few people that are standing up and taking positions. And I'm proud to say when they do that, because this may be one of the most important positions to take during this time or even in recent history.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, as you well know, was one of the main detractors on TV of the movement that Colin Kaepernick started by kneeling. He attacked them resoundingly, literally daily, attacked that entire movement until it became fashionable and accepted by the NBA, the NFL, and they started allowing people to say whatever. Now, Colin Kaepernick never got his job back, but they made allowances when you saw the WNBA, primarily, the Minnesota Lynx and others who took strong positions, and then other athletes started following suit. But Stephen A. Smith was always very critical, and I was surprised that he actually really isolated and spoke out against LeBron, echoing disappointment and having temerity to make it an issue when LeBron's family situation with respect to his wife and children, that's private and out of bounds.
That's right.
So, but in any event, what about the traditional civil rights organizations? You have your preachers. Are they on board with this primarily?
It's so disturbing to me. I tell you a story. First of all, the answer to your question is yes. And this is why it's so painful to me, but there's some good sides of it too. we have flyers that we produce to get this information to our people, and we're getting them to our people. And we've had some churches that have come, can I have 200 of these? Can I have 300? We're passing it out to all of our people. And on these flyers, we have information that people can tap into so that they can see and find out information that will let them know more information about this and help them make a better decision. So that's the good side of it. The bad side of it, one of the largest churches in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, it's in Maryland, huge church, thousands of members. I had a sister and brother come, and they were buying some products, and somehow I asked the sister, they were a married couple, beautiful couple, you got the vaccination? And she said, yeah, we're gonna get it. She said, me and my husband did not want to get it, and we were against it. She said, but our preacher, this is one of the mega churches, our preacher brought in 2 experts, and she made sure she let me know, and they were Black, and they were high-ranking government officials. And he brought them in, not just one, but he brought in 2 of them. And they told us that this was the best decision and that it was safe. And we didn't want to do it. Our spirits were telling us not to do it, but then because our preacher brought it in and we trust our preacher, we know he wouldn't do anything evil. We prayed on it and we made the decision that we're going to get the vaccination, which is an assassination. And it really bothered me because I'm like, our people are wise enough. Our spirits are telling us, white folks have never paid us to go get medicine and get health care. White folks have never said, look, your mother needs insulin. Here's $100 so you can go get her some insulin. They've never, you get a free donut if you come and get you got to pay for medical care in this society. And sometimes they don't give you good care even when you're paying. And yet they giving Black folks $1 million lottery tickets and you can buy $150 off a weapon, gun, they playing commercials every other moment on every Black radio station, white radio station, TV program. Everything is telling you to do it, and they'll offer you money, donuts, free marijuana in DC. They say you can come get you a free, I'm being very serious, you can get some free marijuana.
Dinners, ball games, everything.
So when have they ever paid us to go get healthy? That's never happened. And let us be reasonable. The only example that I know of in just the way the medical industry works in the United States of America, when they pay you to get medical service is when it's something that is experimental and they want to test it. And they'll say, hey, we got $5,000 for anybody that will help us test this new medication. Come and sign up today. If it's not experimental and they're not trying to do trials, they don't pay or offer you nothing to get medical care. That's something you got to pay for and invest in. This is very strange. It's arbitrary, and it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because they're intending to do the kind of harm to us. They're not going to care how much money you get after you get these vaccinations or vaccinations because they have something nefarious planned that I'm not sitting in the room to tell you, but I know it's not good.